Hello and welcome to the Mastering the Hustle interview series. I'm your host, Joel Calkins, and today I'm joined by Aaron Shurts, who is a founder and principal of Mentor Creative Group. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me today. Would you like to take a couple minutes to tell us a little bit more about who you are and a little bit more about your company?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joel. Yeah, so my name's Aaron. Like Joel said, I'm the owner, founder of Mentor Creative Group. We're a digital agency in Seattle, Washington. Just coming up on our 10th year anniversary. So I started the company as the individual sole founder doing everything. Our focus is in kind of all things digital design. A lot of people usually say, well, what does that mean? What do you actually do? So a little bit of context of that would just be we work with clients, and most of the work that we do is usually designing and building websites, mobile apps, digital experiences, all things kind of interactive, and then also a lot of digital marketing. Naturally, when you have a client that comes to you and says, "Hey, can you help me, for example, design and build my e-commerce website?" The next question is, "Great, you built this great thing for me, and we launched it. Can you help me market and get people to come to it, or help me sell more of my products?" And so that's everything that we do. We design a lot of campaigns that could be digital campaigns, it could be print collateral, majority of it's digital, all the way to TV commercials. So everything in between um, is kind of where we sit. But our roots have always been started in kind of the product space. So what I was speaking about before about kind of experiences. Yeah, so it started with me as the kind of sole person, and then grew to where we have at any given moment around 15 to 20 people that are working for us. Um, we have kind of a core group of full-time individuals. If you know anything about product development, usually there's a team involved in that. And so that team is usually different roles, and that's how we're structured, where we have designers and engineers and product uh, managers or project managers, really, and then the account side. And so all those individuals are part of our core team that are full time. And then the way that the company was structured was kind of a direct outcome of some of my previous experience at larger global agencies. And a lot of it was what I didn't want to do, or what I learned that is like kind of the bad way to do things, in my opinion. Because a lot of my previous life, I was a creative director, and it was a large agency, so there was around 150 just at one location. Again, it was a global agency, but just a single location in Seattle, 150. That's a lot of people to make sure that you've got that are billable and make sure that they're on projects and utilized. And so a lot of what was happening there was I was going in my last 6 months, 9 months, project to project and triaging. Why is this? Why is this having issues? What's the problem here? And a lot of that had to do less about the client and the project. It was about the people, and it was about how it was staffed. And a lot of what was happening was new project would come in, and it would be staffed by people that were not on a project. So they weren't being billed. And so it didn't matter what their level of experience was, like if they're super junior or if they've got years of experience or their experience within that subject matter and space. It was they're available, put them on this because we have to get them billable. And so that was creating all kinds of problems. It was like, oh, this person hates this person that they're on this project with, or they had this political issue with this client that they're working for, and they don't believe in what they're doing. Kind of the whole myriad of things, but it all had to do with how it was staffed. And so I thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. I don't want to do that if I'm going to start my own company. And so that was kind of how it all began. And that's how we do it today. So we have a kind of our core group, and then we have um, the larger network of people that are contractors, freelancers, agency partners, specialists in certain areas. So that way we can be kind of true consultants and agnostic to how we approach solutions for clients. Because a lot of times with our business, clients will come to us and say, hey, here's the problem that we're trying to solve, but we don't know what the solution to that problem is.
Mhm.
And there's kind of two ways to approach that. You have the standard business model where you may be the platform shop and you say, hey, I'm going to sell you this product and we're going to try to make this product fit into the thing that you have a problem
Yeah.
with. Let's make it solve that. Or you have the camp that we sit on, which is we're not that, and we actually are just going to try to hear what your needs are and then try to come up with the solution or possible solutions that could potentially work for you and then help implement those. And so neither of those are really wrong. They're just kind of two different ways to go about it. And that was what we've done, and kind of that's how we do it today.
That's awesome. So, as you started your new company, you mentioned a couple things that stuck out to me. The first, in terms of, starting with the problem, understanding the problem, and then building the right solution, and doing that with a cross-functional team. So you got your product or project manager, your designer, your developers. Um, can you give me an example of a time, or a time you were particularly proud of what you created or what you solved for a particular client?
Um, there's always different stories that can be told, about all the different things that we do. I would say that this one's kind of fun. So, and I can talk openly about it.
Sure.
Um, Northwest brand, they're smaller. It's not I mean, we work with a lot of enterprise companies,
Hmm.
a lot of those stories I can't really tell,
Hmm.
so otherwise I would just be talking in generalities, which isn't that interesting to listen to.
Yeah.
Um, but one company here locally is called Zeke's Pizza.
Hmm.
They're a Northwest brand. They've been around since the grunge day era of, early days of grunge in Seattle. And so it was they're a client that came during COVID, which was also kind of why part of why it's something we're proud of, is because during that time, we lost 90% of our business in a week when COVID hit. Um, Almost had to shut the doors completely.
Mm.
And a lot of that was because, we do so much work. We're kind of agnostic in terms of um, sector,
Hmm.
and who we go after, who we sell to. But we have a lot of experience in the e-commerce and retail space. Once you get experience in one area, clients naturally come to you because you have that experience, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I came from and how we built things. And so COVID happened, lost a ton of business, retail closed down, and then things kind of came alive again. But during the shutdown, everyone was trying to figure out, how are we going to sell? What are we going to do now? And there was a panel for Puget Sound Business Journal, and Zeke's one of the founders was on that panel, and it just so happened that um, one of my team members, who's on the sales team with me, was on that call, kind of just on the Zoom call, listening in, kind of hearing what they had to say. Well, how are they dealing with the pandemic? What are they doing? And a lot of what they talked about was how they were really struggling with how to go digital, because everything that they'd done so for, and historically
Hmm.
was very traditional, very like pen to paper. I mean, they had, IT systems, because you have to have point of sales and things like that to run restaurants, right? But it was still very archaic in how they were approaching it. And a lot of what they wanted to do was change the organization so that way they could get away from having to have large headcount and staff because they couldn't anymore because everything was shut down, to move to digital so that people could be self-serve, right?
Mhm.
And so we're listening to that, and kind of hearing, well, we feel like we could help them. And my colleague, her name is Britt, she reached out to them directly, and she kind of prides herself in her emails to people, like really thinking, listening about what their needs are, and kind of what I was talking about before, like how can we actually help them? And coming from an event like that, they even said it themselves. They had like 50 emails that came from that of people being like, "Hey, we want to work with you."
Sure.
And what she kind of said to them resonated and stood out to them. So that's how we got a call, and had a meeting with them. That turned into redesigning and rebuilding, replatforming their website. And a lot of times this is what happens. Like we do one thing for a client, and then they trust us, and then they want us to help them with the next thing and then the next thing. And that's exactly what happened. Um, we did that first, and then it became, hey, can you help us with our point of sale solution? Because what we have now, is so outdated. We can't really do a lot of the things that we want to do. Um, and so we know we need to switch that, but we don't necessarily trust ourselves to make that decision completely because
Mhm.
that's not our background, right?
Yeah.
So we helped them with that, just talking to vendors and auditing and kind of going through a whole sort of RFP process, I guess, if you want to call it that, even though it was more discovery.
Mhm.
And then giving our recommendations and working with them on that. And then they implemented it. They switched everything over, and kind of we helped them along the way, which then led to, um, hey, now, now can you help us with our internal IT systems? I mean, we're not an IT company, right? But we have so many partners and people we've worked with in the
Sure.
past that are like, we sit so adjacent to that,
Mhm.
and we integrate with all those systems. And we've had to build those and architect those systems before. It was like, sure, we can first we got to figure out what you even have.
Mhm.
So we ended up, having people in physical stores going through every single store location, trying to map out how everything had been set up for them because they didn't know.
Yeah.
And their IT support, the people that were there originally weren't on staff anymore because everybody left during COVID, right?
Right.
And so then that happened. And it's now we're moving into more of the marketing space for them, right? So it's like a continued relationship that um we don't do. It's not like it's our highest grossing client we've ever had, but it's someone that we love working with. I've had them out on the boat with me fishing. It's like someone that every time you see them, it's a pleasant conversation. Everyone enjoys working with them. And we hear great feedback, and they trust us, and that's what's the most important thing. Obviously, we have to stay in business, right? You got to make
Mhm.
money, keep your head afloat, but
Yeah.
um, you kind of want to work with people that are fun to be around, and you enjoy, and that's one of those clients that I think we're all pretty proud of.
I like what you said there about, building that trust. And that is clear, starting from what it sounds like, helping them with their website to then a point of sale to some of the IT and now the marketing. You've been able to grow that relationship with them because you've been able to show that you're solving their problems in very real ways, probably tangible ways that, meets their needs. And so I think it's really important for people that are either watching this or listening to this, to understand, like, starting with the problem first, that's the kind of result that you could get. Um, so if you'd humor me just for a bit, you talk about the design of things, and it sounds like you do design, web design. Obviously, a point of sale system is also an experience, right? It's also the digital meeting the physical world. How do you navigate, or what are your preferred, I guess, methods or processes to navigate those challenges?
Hmm. Um, just as far as how to design for them, you mean?
Yeah,
or
like how do you start with that problem and then flush it out and test solutions and then get to where
yeah,
you're
yeah,
at today?
that's right. I mean, a lot of that has to do with the design process,
Yeah.
which is kind of a framework that anybody can use. We've been talking a lot about that. In fact, we're working on a presentation that we can go and give to businesses
Nice.
and at the enterprise level to say, here's how you can take that design process and apply that to any business decision that you may have.
Mhm.
A lot of people, they find out what we do and they're like, oh, well, I'm not a creative. I can never do any of that. And it's like, yeah, but the process to get there is not like voodoo magic,
Right.
right? There's a logic to all of this that anybody can use to get from this unknown space to an answer.
Mhm.
The difference between a creative and a business person, the only real difference is kind of how we use our brains and how we think about things. But
Yeah.
the method's the same. So a lot of what we do is kind of using that structure, and the
Mhm.
structure is pretty standard. A problem is given to us,
Mhm.
and first thing you do is you research that, right? You talk to the person, you find out as much information as you can about that. A lot of that is just the why behind things, right? Just
Mhm.
come asking those questions. They may give you an answer, and it's like, okay, well, why do you think that? So the more you dig and investigate, um, the more information you have to then go and research further for yourself. And so a lot of that starts with stakeholder research.
Mhm.
Then we conduct our own, and then we talk to users. Like they're going to be the ones that, if it's a consumer, if it's a target market, target audience, an end user, anyone that would be within the space of kind of who's going to be consuming this, is who it makes sense to speak to, because they're the ones that are going to give you the true answer. And you ask those questions in a way that's unbiased as much as you can. So that way they're not telling you what they think you want to hear. And then also they're not just saying things that they think they want,
Mhm.
right? Because if you ask somebody, if you could have any car you want, they're going to give you something that like shoots laser beams and flies through the air, right? And that's
Mhm.
that's way too open-ended. So a lot of this, we spend a lot of time with what kinds of questions are we asking? Um, why are we asking? What are we trying to get? What's the goal from that? Once we have all that information, a lot of times the answers start presenting themselves from a design perspective before we ever have to sit down with pen to paper, right? You start hearing kind of the common theme that's running amongst
Mhm.
people. They may be saying, we all value the imagery that's being shown for whatever it is you're talking about. Like that might be
Mhm.
something that people it keeps coming up, right?
Yeah.
And it's the blue blazer versus the pink one, right? And everyone loves that. That answers your design hierarchy is what we would call that.
Mhm.
Right? If everyone loves that, then that's the first thing you should be showing, right? And it's the largest thing you should be showing. It's like logical solutioning, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so that same process, it doesn't matter what you're applying it to. If you're talking about a point of sale system, right? You're still doing the same thing. You're still asking those same questions, still
Mhm.
trying to talk to users and find out what's important to them, what's important to the business, take all those requirements, um, and then use those to kind of stack rank everything, right? What's the most important thing, and what's the least important? And once you have that, you can use that to, base all of your decisions off of. From there, that's where kind of the as a designer, your creative kind of
Mhm.
experience comes in. A lot of that is just looking at what's been done before because kind of everything has been at this point.
Yeah.
But it's using all that inspiration to then help solve the problem that you have at hand.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I mean that's how we go about it. That's generally the same process that everyone goes uses. You get to the point where you finally do have something that is tangible for someone to see and react to. And then you put that in front of people and get their feedback, and then you iterate on it. And that's the same way with software. It's the same way with architecting a solution. You build it and you test it. There's been so much focus on kind of an agile process
Mhm.
within the last 15 years. And that's why, right?
Yeah.
In order to move fast, you have to be willing to sacrifice perfection in order to get something out there and learn from it.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where a lot of larger enterprise companies fall down a lot of times is
Mhm.
they spend so much time getting a product to market. By the time it's actually out there, you have startups that have come in and done that, 2 years ago,
Right.
right? Even though it was on their roadmap 2 years ago,
Mhm.
took the startup 6 months to get there. It took them 2 years to get there,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter how much thinking you put into it until it hits the market, until people actually can use it. You really don't know what you've got or
Exactly.
how effective it is. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, getting it sooner than later is going to give you way more information, ultimately
Hmm.
get you time to money
Right.
faster than you would otherwise. And so, no, that's a good word. Um, so, Aaron, I want to talk a little bit about your journey as a business owner, entrepreneur. Like you said that you were with a global agency, I think is what you said prior to starting up the Mentor Creative Group. Um, as you made that shift, what were maybe some of the things you learned as an owner that you didn't realize were going to be important uh, before you got into it?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that question come through that you sent over to me earlier, and I just been thinking about a lot about that one, and it's kind of hard to answer because it's like you never realize as a business owner, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know your business,
Hmm.
like you know how to run it, but what you don't know is that a global pandemic is going to hit.
Hmm.
You don't know that you're going to get sued. You don't know that your business partner, in my case, I had one in the early days, and um, that person decided to leave the company and literally vanished for a year. No one could
Wow.
find
Wow.
that person. Um, so there's just things that happen that you can't predict, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's the harder part when asked that question. It's like, um, what are some of the things that you know you didn't realize were going to be important? And it's like, well, the things that you do know are important are the same things that are always important, right? It's the people are super important.
Yeah.
How you manage your finances and your capital is super important. Um, Taking risks, calculated risks is important. Um, for a while, and I still feel like this to a certain extent, but in the early days of the business, it felt like I was taking a gamble almost every single day,
Hmm.
right? It was like, if I do this, what will happen, right? If
Yeah.
I make this one decision, is the company going to stay alive or not?
Yeah.
And so, when you're at that point, it's a tough place to be.
Hmm.
Uh, it can be kind of fun, especially if you have a high propensity for risk. I do not. Um, so, so that was a challenge. So, a lot of overthinking, a lot of late nights, waking up, kind of having freakouts in the middle of the night
Sure.
of what am I doing? I can't believe I just said yes to this thing that could cost the company, you know, $100,000 or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that come to mind. You can never really account for the ups and downs, but
Hmm.
um, the important thing that I've found is trying to build kind of that network of other business owners
Hmm.
that you can go to and have conversations that your team doesn't understand. I mean, they're never going to understand what you're going through as a business owner
Yeah.
because you can't really, even if they knew everything behind the scenes, they're still not going to understand because they're not the owner of the company,
Right.
right? And so having a network of other business owners and kind of what you're doing even is
Hmm.
super important because you have somebody that, I mean, I just got off a call before this, a couple hours ago, and that same network was like, "Hey, I'm having an HR issue at my company. Can you guys just have a quick call and we can talk about this? Because I want to hear what has happened, what you guys have to say about it, what you would do." Um, and those are great networks to have. It just so happened that a lot of my relationships and contacts, one of them kind of refer me to a global organization called Entrepreneurs Organization (EO). Um, that is a global group. If you're a company, a business owner of a certain size, you can join that. And then all of a sudden, you're in a chapter group. Like I'm here, part of the Seattle chapter, and you are then part of a smaller group, and you get to know those people really well. You have real kind of candid conversations with them about your business, about their business, and it's super helpful.
Yeah.
And that's just there's many of them that are the groups that are like that are out there. But a lot of that I started out doing just having other agency friends. We get together and we bitch about stuff. We talk about the same things, but even with that, I can still call those people up and be like, "Hey, here's the thing that have you ever had this issue before? What would you do?"
Mhm.
Um, because, to your question, you just can't predict
Yeah.
what's going to be easy and what's going to be hard. And some of the things that you think are going to be easy are super hard, you know?
Absolutely. And so you hit on an interesting theme, which is, for any business owner, any business leader, anybody that's taking risk, is that ability to stay resilient, because tough times are going to happen, right? You're going to have issues where maybe you do make a decision that didn't go your way, or you, like in your case, you had a partner who stepped out of the business and you had to figure out what you're going to do. But I like what you said about having people around you in those times to kind of help you think through those issues. Is probably a good reminder that you're not alone, or you don't have to be alone in this. So that's a very good call out. So Aaron, I base again on that theme. You mentioned, there's times when, something will wake you up in the middle of the night. So where you're at right now, being almost 10 years into this company, what are the challenges that you face today? What are those things that kind of keep you up at night?
Yeah, great question. A lot of the time, a lot of the challenges are kind of still the same. I mean,
Mhm.
the biggest thing that has been hard for us, and it's always a challenge, is growth. Like
Mhm.
the goal of the company, we have some lofty goals. I mean, one of our goals is to be um, the best design uh, firm of our size in the country.
Mhm.
And so when you set a lofty goal like that, there's going to be challenges associated with it.
Yeah.
But part of the reason that we set that goal is to help us in growing the company.
Mhm.
Um, we've tried multiple times. We've hovered around the same size for, gosh, 6 or 7 years
Okay.
out of the 10. Um, and we haven't quite figured out how to get over that hurdle. We've
Mhm.
tried a couple times, different things, different methods. We opened another location down in Dallas 2 days before the world shut down. We never knew that was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so by the time we got to the point where we were cash flow positive on that, we lost the person that we'd hired down there, and we were so exhausted. It was like, we have to just focus on staying alive here in Seattle, right? And we've tried to build team. I think where we're at now is settling more into our slow growth and
Mhm.
being okay with that. I think that's been a challenge as a business owner, especially if you have kind of lofty goals.
Yeah.
It's very much a 2 steps or 1 step forward and like 5 steps backwards
Mhm.
kind of approach. And
Yeah.
I think it's part of being a business owner, unless you get super lucky, right? And you're in the right place at the right time. You've got the thing that almost nobody else has,
Mhm.
and you can explode from that. Um, being a A consultancy is totally different than a product company.
Yeah.
We don't have investors. Everything all the revenue we have comes from the work that we do with clients.
Mhm.
Right? We've never taken on outside investment. And so that has meant that you do have to grow slowly. But we're also pretty conservative in how we manage the business. So in our history, we've never had to lay a person off, even through COVID. Super proud of that.
Yeah.
Got really close. I can't tell you
I
how
can
close we
imagine.
were, but yeah, we've never had to lay anyone off. Obviously, people have come and gone for
Yeah.
other reasons.
Mhm.
Um, and we do our best to, give back to our employees and make sure that everyone's taken care of.
Mhm.
And in a small company, you can be pretty flexible with how you do things.
Yeah.
And that's can be another challenge.
Mhm.
You know, as the economy the highs and lows of the economy happen, um, we feel that especially in a tech city like Seattle,
Mhm.
where when tech is booming, all of the talent is getting sucked up by the largest companies that are out there. And it just
Yeah.
so happens we have some of the largest ones in the world right here, right?
Right.
And so with that, salaries skyrocket.
Mhm.
As an agency of our size, we can't compete with that.
Yeah.
And so that becomes a challenge on the resource side. To how do you keep people
Mhm.
when they've got recruiters beating down their door offering like 100K over what they're making here,
Yeah.
right? And so for us, the company culture is super important. And what I mean by that is giving people flexibility to take care of themselves, to work the way they need to get their work done, to trust them to get their work done. And when they don't, have a candid conversation with them,
Mhm.
know that if there is one person that, you know, isn't following through or doing what they need to do, it's impacting everyone because we're a small team. Um, we take a company retreat every year, get out of here and go work on our goals for the upcoming year. This year we took the whole team to Whistler, um, and had a great time. Worked on work things for a while, and then went and had fun on the slopes. So like we try to do things like that too. We are a hybrid kind of team right now. So 3 days in office, 2 days out of office. I'm in the
Nice.
office right now. And we've been that way for ever since we kind of came back from, the lockdown. For better or worse, a lot of people didn't want to come back. Um, but we felt like it was so important to have collaboration as a creative team,
Mhm.
because it's so much easier to have multiple minds together in a room looking at something and thinking about a solution and bouncing ideas off each other versus over a Zoom call and trying to manage that through a screen.
Right.
And so we went that route. That meant a lot of change. I know you kind of had a question around adaptability and how you manage that and how you be successful and adapt over time. And that's been one of the big challenges. It's just how do we manage the team dynamic going forward, when so many people have gone remote, gotten rid of offices, um, and we've kind of kept ours, but that meant that in our old office we had 3 people, 4 people ever in the office at a time, and we had all this square footage, and it was like,
Mhm.
why are we even here? So downsizing and finding a space that makes sense for the team and figuring that out. That was a challenge. That wasn't until recent that we finally figured it out after moving 2 times,
Mhm.
so those kind of things. Um, yeah.
Nice. So I got one more question for you, Aaron. What's next? What's next for the Mentor Creative Group?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'd love to double the headcount, um, and grow mainly, I mean, obviously, sustainability is always an
Mhm.
issue at an agency, right?
Yeah.
We ebb and flow with the work that comes in and goes out,
Mhm.
and the economy affects that a great deal. Because if businesses are pulling back, then they're not hiring us, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so, um, you know, I would love to get to the point where we have um, a larger team, potentially a couple locations. And that's what we've been working toward for the last 5 years. Just continue to grow the the different client relationships that we have. We do great work, and that's not the issue. It's more, we're competing with a lot of other agencies and firms and even individuals, for work. So that's a challenge. We've looked at a lot of different things. Do we grow slowly over time? Do we merge with someone else? What does that mean? We've been approached a few different times around um, an acquisition, so, those things are always interesting to us, but we haven't taken the leap yet because it has to be, a good scenario for everyone. As I said before, like our people are really important to us.
Yeah.
Uh, and so anything that we do impacts them. Whether that's hiring more people here to grow the team or
Mhm.
elsewhere to grow the team or um, partnering with another firm, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to say, but we still have our sights on continuing to do great work. Make sure that, like I said, that we are known nationally for the work that we do, um, and that we continue focusing on the culture that we have.
That's awesome. Aaron, thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. I've been talking with Aaron Shurts, who is the founder and principal of the Mentor Creative Group. Again, thank you so much. I will be excited to see where you end up.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, absolutely.